The first thing I'm going to do is take you through the most important buttons on the camera body. The first is your shutter button. This is a two-phase button, meaning that the button has two positions. The first is a halfway depression, and the second is a full depression, which will actually take the picture. You need to train your finger to feel where that first depression point is. It's a very soft click when you push down. It's almost like you're just breaking through the stress point or something. If you push it down all the way, it will actually take the picture. You need to train your finger to feel the sensitivity between these two positions. The second most important button is the main selection dial. I also call this your primary selector. It is located directly behind the shutter button, and you will notice that it rotates to the left or right. The third most important selector is on the back of the camera. It has a little AV and a plus-minus sign. This is your exposure compensation button. It is critically important that you are aware of this button and what it does. The next most important dial, I would say, is the mode dial. This allows you to control which mode you are shooting in, whether it's a basic mode where the camera is going to have a lot of the automatic settings done for you, or if it's a creative mode. These are the modes where you're going to tell the camera what to do. Out of all the buttons on the camera, you are going to use these four more than anything. I promise you that. If you look on the opposite side of the shutter button, on that side of the lens, if you look halfway down, there is going to be an oval button. That oval button is your lens release button. You are going to press this every time you rotate a lens off of your camera body. Just below the lens release, we have the depth of field preview button. Its function is to close the shutter blades down so you can see your depth of field in real time through the viewfinder. The button above the lens release button in the depth of field preview is the force flash button. This button is useful if you ever wish to force your flash to fire. Now, right behind the primary selector wheel, we have a button that says ISO. This is your ISO button, and it will allow you to quickly change your ISO settings without being confused. You are going to use this button quite a bit. We also have our on-off switch. Obviously, that's a good one to know. And then if we look on the back of the camera, we have several buttons, and it's really not that bad. The menu button is a very important button, and you are going to be using it often. It will allow you to access the menu of the camera and to tweak its settings. I have a whole portion of this video dedicated to the menu. Just to the right of the menu button, we have the display button. This will allow you to turn the monitor on or off when you're shooting. It's just a way to save battery power. When you are reviewing images, the display button will allow you to toggle through different sets of information about each image. Just to the bottom right of the LCD monitor, we have the play button. You are going to press this every time you would like to review your images. Just to the right of the play button, we have the delete button. It has this little garbage can icon next to it, and it will allow you to delete your images if you want. Above these two buttons, we have 5 buttons, and I call this the directional pad selector, because you will notice that there are these little arrows on the outside 4, and they will allow you to do things such as move through the menus or select things or to move through your pictures when you're zoomed in. It's a pretty intuitive thing to use. Now, you will also notice that there are these little icons next to each of these 4 buttons, and these buttons act as a way to manipulate your settings of the camera when you're shooting. I'm going to show you how to do this more when we cover the LCD portion of the DVD, but to quickly name them, the top button is your white balance. The right button is your autofocus mode. The bottom button is your picture styles button, and the far left button is your shooting drive mode. The middle button, which is called the set button, is really just the select button. The Q button, or quick control button, will allow you to change shooting functions on the LCD monitor. We have the live view video record button, which means that in all of your creative modes, this button will activate your live view, and in the video record mode, it will start and stop video recording. The last two buttons are also super important. The far right button is your autofocus point selector. When you push this button, you will get a red icon lighting up in your viewfinder on any of those autofocus points. Using your primary selector, you can designate which of these focus points the camera will use. I'll be going over this a little bit more later. Now the button to the left of that is your exposure lock button, or your flash exposure lock button if you are using a flash. I have a whole lesson on this video specifically for this, and it's going to take me some time to explain what it does. Just know that this is the exposure lock button. If you look below these two buttons, you will see a plus magnifying glass and a minus magnifying glass. And what this means is that when you're in a playback mode or in a live view mode, you will be able to zoom in and out of the image. So that's an overview of the camera. We've gone over all the buttons and we have briefly reviewed what they do. I promise you that if you practice, the day will come that you will feel you have complete control over your camera, and it feels really good to know how to do everything. If for whatever reason you can't remember which button does what, just come on back and we'll go over it again. For the rest of the DVD, we will go through each of these settings individually so you know what they are and how to use them. If you found this video helpful, you may be interested in my new DVD, Canon Rebel T2i Crash Course. I cover both photography and video shooting features of your camera. It can be ordered from the following link.